Are hand traps actually ruining Yu-Gi-Oh? Or is it just the deck building gimmick and necessary evil of the current format? Hello duelists, it's Tombox here, and in this video we'll be addressing the problem, which is the hand trap all over the place, too many hand traps, not enough Yu-Gi-Oh to play, yada yada, you guys know it, and so forth. So I know many people are complaining that hand traps are ruining Yu-Gi-Oh! Ruining Yu-Gi-Oh! Oh my god, I literally can't even, I feel so betrayed by hand traps, like I can't even play Yu-Gi-Oh! On a more serious note, being unable to start your engine is the #1 problem of, well, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Today due to hand traps. And without the engine starting, you're usually left with a pretty weak board due to too many interruptions, and then your weak board can easily be destroyed by your opponent just by them sneezing on it. Now, hand traps weren't always like this. There was back in a time where hand traps were actually well accepted as a form of counterplaying against your opponent. But what made them so different to the ones that we have today? 5 years ago, hand traps would have looked more like Effect Veiler, we would have Battle Fader, perhaps even a Swift Scarecrow, maybe a Gore's Tragodia, and Maxi, because Maxi still existed. The only difference in terms of context is that Maxi, we weren't as spammy back then, so it was not as critical. And ED Crow. In terms of the hand traps we're playing today, we have the Ghost Sisters, Ghost Ogre Snow Rabbit, Ash Blossom Joyous Spring, Ghost Reaper Winter Cherries, and who else is there? There's also Drawn Longbirds. They all seem to come in pairs apparently, and then there's also Maxi. Now the biggest difference between the hand traps of yesterday versus the hand trap of today is that the previous generation hand traps focused on keeping you alive, and most of them were kind of focused and locked into the battle phase. In terms of the hand traps of today, we focus more on just shutting down the board and not letting anything develop so that you can have an easy counter and, well, end your opponent fairly quickly without giving them a chance at all. With the exception of course, being Maxi. Maxi is a bit of a dick in all formats. The C in his name stands for Hypothetically speaking, can we actually take out all the hand traps in the current format we have and actually play? Well, obviously there's going to be huge like changes, but say hypothetically, let's entertain the idea of that, and what would actually happen to our current format? Now, based on what we know so far is that the top decks of our current format are able to eat multiple hand traps and still grind through the game. As long as you play it smart and you don't waste your big resources and you know how to bait out the correct cards, you're still able to play your game and set up a pretty decent board, I would say. Whereas for any decks that aren't able to, most would actually agree that the decks that are one tier below, they are more susceptible to hand traps. That's just like a very common thing that they share right now. With all that in mind, what are some of the decks that are actually going to flow back to the top? I'm going to say ABC is going to have a really good chance due to the fact that without any sort of interruption, no Ash, no Ogre, they're going to be able to set up Decode Talker ABC. For anyone that has actually played against that, you know that it is an uphill grind the moment that setup has happened, because they're going to have the ABC tag out, which gives them even more monsters for them to link off. After they've done their whole link off and link play, they drop the ABC Dragon Buster to finish you off, setting up a very quick OTK. As for Pendulum Magicians, expect double Omega not getting interrupted. They'll probably run more pen calls, they'll probably get their Sork off every time. It's just a ridiculous amount of speed. In terms of their back row, they're always going to have that back row against you, but they can simplify the game state quite easily without any interruptions, limiting your cards in hand and just having enough interruptions just to stop you. Then there's Grass decks. Grass decks, they're never going to fear that Ash Blossom without Ash Blossom in play. They're always going to get their massive mill. They'll probably switch to 3 copies of Left Arm Offering as well, even with the limited, well, that grass looks greener. It's okay, because they're going to get it, and they're going to get the mill. And once they get that mill, they're just so far ahead. Even Void Feast, they can Void Feast you if they're playing Infernoids, and you're just going to have to eat it. That also puts them way ahead. Fluffle decks will probably just not get interrupted, and they'll try to OTK you as much as they can, just because their engine's not going to get interrupted. That's one thing. The second thing is their OTK potential and their board breaking potential is also very strong. And let's look at the deck that's already very strong, Spirals. Just expect that game 1, you're going to lose to the Wizard thing. So in other words, everyone's probably going to change up how they play the meta altogether. And hand traps are preventing this kind of format from existing. Essentially, the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Without hand traps becomes a bit of a gong show where it's literally a die roll. The guy who rolls and wins goes first, gets whatever they want, because 2 cards set up for a game-winning board is pretty easy, especially when they're uninterrupted. And at that point, is the game actually fun? I mean, you're just going into like locals, rolling a dice, oh, he has the setup and the game's over. In fact, the game doesn't even feel very fulfilling for the person winning. It's just, I won the die roll, I have to admit that I got this, and I'm so good at Yu-Gi-Oh! Because I know how to execute a combo without even thinking about the interactions between other players. What makes a player very good, in my opinion, is that they can understand the matchup, they know how their opponent's going to interrupt them, and they can think ahead of them and play around these interruptions. And usually that's how most of the strong players are. They know how to do this very, very well. So the previous scenario was that we remove all the hand traps and keep all the decks the way they are, and we know that it's going to be a huge gong show. But say we removed hand traps and then we corrected the format so it made a little bit more sense. How would we actually go about doing this? And this is just my opinion on how we're actually going to approach this. You can leave your thoughts down in the comment section below as always. So how do we balance the Force? Or, sorry, Star Wars just came out. How do we balance a format without hand traps? For that, I'm going to give you the context of what makes a good deck, and then I'll balance it based off of that. So far, consistency is king in terms of the best decks. They usually have low resource combos that are pretty easy to execute with 1 or 2 cards. They can usually play around the trending interruptions of the format, hand traps, for the most part right now. And they usually have pretty solid recovery, even if their board gets broken. So they're not just like a one-trick pony. So there's 3 things that would have to change quite drastically due to the fact that we're not playing hand traps. First of all, banless hits, they're going to be quite different. We're also going to get stronger traps that are going to interrupt the format. And possibly the decks that were to come out in the future, in terms of their combo capability, they're going to be a bit more difficult, or they're not going to be as strong if they're easy. In terms of the banless stuff hit, how would they change that? Right now, they kind of hit around the circle. They hit the decks that need to get hit once they die off, but if we were to take away hand traps, we need to take away consistency even more so by hitting key cards in decks. If it was playing True Draco, say goodbye to stuff like Masterpiece. You can say goodbye to Diagram, kind of like how OCG hits stuff. And then if you're playing Mermails, imagine your Megalo and your Atlantean Prince being taken away from you. But like you're gonna see like a reduced number of these like impactful cards, just so that it's harder for you to combo, because these combos are very, very deadly. And in terms of like making bigger cards that break the board, we had like Torrential Tribute. That's a pretty good board breaker. We probably get more cards at that level. I can't imagine them introducing more cards similar to Dimensional Barrier or Evenly Matched. I know they are going to do that in the future, but in terms of like how we actually counter boards, we need a bit more mid-tier interruption. Like previously we played like what, Breakthrough Skills, Fiendish Chains, just to like stun your opponent and then we can counter them accordingly. Yeah, that stuff needs to come back. And in terms of making decks harder to combo, we have perhaps 3-4 card combos that lead to those game-breaking boards. But then you need 3 or 4 cards to actually access to that. And then they also limited your stuff with the ban list, so it's not that easy. So you can only get halfway through your combo, and then that's as far as you can get. Or if they make, 2 card combos for your deck, the 2 cards that you combo with usually leave yourself pretty weak in terms of board standing, but strong enough to be a threat against your opponent. Kind of going back to the days where there was the Fire Fist, Mermail, Harpy, Gear Gia format. That was a lovely format. It was not too fast, not too slow, very controlly. We got the explosive decks, we got the control deck, we've got the techie deck, and we have, well, the spammy decks as well. We had all sorts of decks back in those formats, and those are the formats that I actually pretty much enjoyed. But due to the fact of introduction of hand traps, we are not going to see that very often, or if we are, we need to see some sort of limitations in hand traps and bigger hits in terms of like overhauling the format. But anyways, that's just my opinion. I got actually several questions for you guys. The first question is, what combination of hand traps would you actually accept in the format? Right now we're playing triple Ash, triple Ogre, maybe Drone Logbird, maybe Reaper because you hate spirals and your place is super meta. Which combination of hand traps would you actually accept in terms of like number of copies and whatnot? Or maybe there's a whole limitations on hand trap altogether. What is your acceptance on that? Second question is, what is the hand traps that give you the most problem? And also tell us what deck do you play, so we have a bit of context. And the third question is, should hand traps be released at a lower rarity? so that everyone has access to it, so that everyone gets a fair play. Right now, Ash is like, what, $70, $80 at the time of making this video, and it is very annoying for anyone to play because pay to win doesn't feel very good. Your opponent, oh, he has the money to play Ash. Although paying to win isn't exactly completely accurate, because if your opponent doesn't know how to, well, play Ash at the correct timing, they will still get punished for playing that card because it is essentially a 1-for-1. Anyways, that is all I got for this. Leave your answers down in the comment section below. I'd love to read through them. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit me up with a thumbs up. If you guys want to see more stuff from MST.TV, hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate it. And as always, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you like this video, please drop us a like so we know we are doing a good job, and you can also subscribe to MST.TV for more fantastic videos by clicking on the button on the left. Don't forget to check out our partners at Imperium Duelist. They make really high quality mats, including some of my own limited edition release stuff. And if you want to check out one of our past videos, click here on the right. As always, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV, and I'll see you next time.